Levack. We have ESPN college basketball analyst Eamonn Brennan joining us. Eamonn Brennan of ESPN.com. You can check out his fine work. And tomorrow night, we're going to have the State Farm Champions Classic right here on 104.5 The Team. We're going to have number 18 Michigan State and number 4 Duke. We'll join that in progress at 7, and then number 5 Kansas and number 1 Kentucky. So that's going to be a lot of fun to go over. And Eamonn, thanks for joining us, man. And the first question is number 1 Kentucky, after struggling with Buffalo yesterday. Are they still number 1, Eamonn?
Oh, yeah, they're number 1. I mean, like they are going to have some things to figure out. Like you for all the talk with John Calipari's had about his platoon system and getting all these guys minutes and everything, and when you have 9 McDonald's All-Americans on your roster, they all want to play, they're all going to be good at different things, and figuring out an actual rotation, if he decides to go that way, or figuring out how those platoons are going to work, it's going to be a work in progress. Like, they could lose to Kansas. Like, Kansas is a really good team, and they have a lot of talented young players themselves. It's not, Kentucky may or may not lose a couple games early in the season here. We just kind of wonder. But overreacting to that would be a mistake. I mean, we saw last year, obviously, but this year's team is even better, and they're really, really good.
Hey, not going to lie, being here in Albany, I knew it probably wasn't realistic. I would love for you to be like, oh, Buffalo is going to be the team just to take every look out, baby.
I wish I could. Although, honestly, playing Kentucky that well in the first half, like, they had a good game plan for them. I think it speaks well for Buffalo, too. Like, you just get worn down by all that talent when the gap is that big, but they played really well.
Now, is that kind of the thing now when you're watching hoops with the one and dones and all these fabulous freshmen walking in, where you sit here in the beginning of the season, watch it, and go, all right, but how good is this team really going to be once they figure out that play time and everybody kind of fits into the system?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think last year with Kentucky, that was really difficult to do because they didn't do it until about a week before the tournament started. They lost at South Carolina late in the year. There was a reason they were an 8 seed. They never really figured it out. And then all of a sudden against Florida in the SEC tournament, they played they're easily their best game of the season to date. Ended up losing a close game against a really good Florida team. But just came out of nowhere in the tournament, and it was like just a switch flipped. The guys were playing defense, and they were rotating on cutters, and they had everybody running at the rim, and it was a totally different team. So I think that's a difficult example, but absolutely, you're looking at guys who are coming in not knowing how to play with teammates, not knowing sort of those intuitive things on a basketball court that even people who play pickup every now and then, if you play with the same teammates for a couple of games, you're going to figure things out. Not having any of that at the beginning of the year, as opposed to teams like Michigan State, which are going to be a lot less talented playing against Duke tomorrow night, but are going to have the benefit of playing in practice with each other for 3-4 years. That stuff really helps early in the season. For teams like Kentucky and even Kansas and Duke with all these freshmen, it's about accelerating process to get to that point by January, February, March, and then seeing what you can do in the tournament.
It's college hoop season, baby. Embrace it. That's what we're doing. The Eamonn Brennan of ESPN on 104.5 The Team. Your home for New York sports tomorrow night. Michigan State, Duke, 7 o'clock. We join that game, and then Kansas, Kentucky right afterwards. And Eamonn, it's kind of weird to see UConn at 17 in the AP. How is this team going to look without Shabazz Napier this year?
It's going to be an interesting look. I mean, a lot of that rides on Ryan Boatwright for sure. He's not the same player Napier was. I don't think he's going to shoot the ball nearly as well at any point in his career, but he's an extremely capable ball handler, really great at breaking down defenses and getting in the lane and creating a lot of havoc just because you can't guard him one-on-one on the perimeter and you can't guard him in his zone. He's going to get in the middle of the lane. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think Rodney Purvis is honestly probably the key for them. I think everywhere else will probably be fine. Brema is going to be a much better center, is going to give them interior scoring, which they didn't really have last year. But Purvis, sort of his ability to knock down shots on the perimeter, playing off of Boatwright. He was a really talented guy coming into NC State, struggled there in a bad sort of toxic situation. Could be a really big season, or at least a really big key to UConn's success is how Rodney Purvis plays.
Hey, now I'm reading over the Champions Classic that we're going to have right here, and there's one team that just kind of seems to stand out, and you mentioned him a second ago, Michigan State. Now, can Izzo get these guys playing to the point where they can compete with all these All-Americans?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And I think it wouldn't be a surprise for Michigan State to win tomorrow night because that Duke team is young, and they're still working stuff in. Now, with the way summer practices are now, freshmen do have a bit more time to figure things out earlier in the year than they used to, and practice starts a little bit earlier in the year than it used to. So the it's not quite as drastic a situation as it used to be when the NCAA basically didn't count the first month of the season when they were talking about tournament seeding and stuff. But yeah, I think, Michigan State's talent is not there this year the way it was last year or the way it usually is. They have good players. Brandon Dawson's a really good player. I think Denzel Valentine might be the best or at least the most fun to watch passer in the country. But it's really going to come down to if Michigan State's ready to play, if they're kind of are what they are right now, versus a Duke team that is going to need to figure things out over the first 2 months of the season, then Michigan State has a chance to win. But in terms of talent, they don't really stack up, but it's going to require a lot of intelligent play on Michigan State's part to get the job done.
Eamonn Brennan of ESPN, ESPN.com. Follow him on Twitter at Eamonn Brennan, previewing hoops, baby. Tomorrow night, Michigan State, Duke. We join that game in progress at 7 o'clock. And Eamonn, Duke has some impressive young guys coming in. They're number 4 in the country. Are the Blue Devils primed to take back that embarrassing tournament loss last year?
I would think so. Yeah, I would think so. I think the tournament loss, talking about it specifically, it highlighted what Duke struggled with all year last year, which was defense. I mean, you can go back to November, December. They hosted Vermont at home and gave up 1.5 per possession and won by 2 points in Cameron. Like, they didn't guard anybody last year. For as good as Jabari Parker and Rodney Hood were, they just didn't defend. And obviously they have a crop of freshmen this year. I think Jahlil Okafor is the favorite player of the year because he's really, really polished. Like a lot of freshmen coming in, he's already kind of ready to be a real college big man on the low block. But how they guard in the low post is going to be the real key for them, not giving up easy buckets. If they defend well, getting points won't be a problem with their talent. It's just going to be guarding and translating that. Because, look, when you get into the tournament, you get into those single situations, if you can't get stops on any given possession, then Mercer can beat you. And that's what we saw happen with Duke last season. So really defense, I think, is the key to watch for them all season.
Eamon, we got Syracuse legend Jim Boeheim. It's his 70th birthday today. Is there any end in sight for this guy? I feel like he's going to coach for another 100 years.
Yeah, it wouldn't be totally surprising if he did. He's that kind of guy. I mean, he's just sort of in a groove. And that sounds funny to say because he's probably been in that same groove for like 30 years at this point, but it's just the sort of thing where he doesn't seem to be wearing down. Things just kind of happen year over year. Like, you look at their roster this year, and it looks like a ton of turnover, and they could struggle, but we said that 2-3 years ago. We said it every year. He brings along guys who are maybe either great recruits coming in or were silent their freshman years and are great sophomores. I mean, I don't know if you're him, as long as you want to keep doing it, that there's any reason to stop anytime soon.
Eamonn Brennan with ESPN on 104.5, the team with Armen Levack.
Now the hardest question we have for you. Where do you stand on Albany Great Danes and Siena Saints being snubbed in the top 25?
I have no comment on the matter.
Well, I mean, come on. There are 2 local schools. We love them very much. They got characters, Will Brown, Jimmy Patsos. Can't we just give them a little, like...
Levack and I are going to the Siena basketball game tonight, sitting courtside. Jimmy Patsos loves to come in studio once a week and just go nuts, man.
I mean, he's the best. He really is. That's a local resource into which you guys should tap as frequently as you possibly can. But look, those guys, preseason poll time, that's not for them. March is teams like that, that's March time.
That's the nicest quote ever, man. Thank you.
Eamonn Brennan, check him out. ESPN, ESPN.com, on Twitter at Eamonn Brennan, your college basketball analyst for ESPN. And tomorrow night, we have the Champions Classic right here on ESPN Radio 104.5, the team. Michigan State Duke at 6:30. Our coverage begins at 7, and then Kansas and Kentucky. Eamonn, thanks for your time, man. Greatly appreciate you tonight.
Yeah, anytime, fellas. Take care.
All right, bro. Talk to you soon.